Love is the form of God. God is love divine. The merger of human love with divine love brings about cosmic order.
In part 1 of The Universal Teacher, we heard Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba reach beyond the divisions of history and the polarities of the present to proclaim that God is one, the God of all mankind, no matter what religion is practiced. That religion is not the cause of hatred in the world, but that it is the human ego which divides and separates. Beyond the illusion of the ego lies the experience of unity, unity with the God within us, with other people, and ultimately with the world around us. The road leading beyond the ego is paved with love, love expressed as selfless service to others. In 1980, the Third World Conference of Sathya Sai service organizations convened at Prasanthi Nilajam, Baba's ashram, with delegates representing 3,000 service units from India and foreign delegates representing 40 nations. While the activities of the organization take many forms, the underlying attitude of service is constant, and it is continually being fostered by Sathya Sai Baba through personal example and by writings, discourses, and the daily experience of darshan as he walks through the crowds accepting the letters and silent prayers of those who have come to him asking for help and guidance in their individual spiritual journey. Sai Baba's philosophy is expressed as having 4 aspects: Satya, Dharma, Shanti, and Prema. Satya, or truth; Dharma, translated as duty, righteousness, the truth in action; Shanti, peace, the equanimity of the mind unaffected by joy or sorrow; and Prema, spiritual love, the kind of love which allows one to revere the God dwelling within another person, rather than the body where he resides. Any of these 4 paths may be the starting point for the journey toward liberation, for they all lead to the goal and merge into it.
The task before mankind is to plant the seeds of truth, righteousness, peace, and love in the heart made ready for their reception. But never before has this become an organized movement in which all humanity was involved. Unless it becomes so, there can be no liberation from fear, anxiety, and injustice. The members of this Sai organization must be ever engaged in the twin processes of purifying the mind and clarifying the intellect. The organization must help people to realize the unity behind all this apparent multiplicity, which is only a superimposition by the human mind on the one that is all this. Truth about oneself is to be learned first. Equanimity is the hardest but the most beneficial of all spiritual disciplines. Without equanimity, life becomes an uncertain game, a constant struggle with fear, hope, anxiety, and doubt. Equanimity has to be achieved in 5 fields: the physical, the social, the karmic, the emotional, and the intuitive. In the physical field, man must learn to be unaffected by seasonal changes of the weather. His body must be immune to the vagaries of heat and cold. Both are valid and valuable. So too are grief and joy, pleasure and pain. Man must realize this and be unaffected by changes in natural or mental weather. In the social field, man must acclimatize himself to praise and blame. Blame is only the shadow of praise. He cannot have one without the other. Profit and loss, success and failure are the obverse and reverse of the same experience. Man has to establish firmly in his inmost consciousness this basic truth about the impact of social conditions on him. He must learn to watch the passing show as the sun watches the procession of clouds below, trying to hide its splendor. The third field is karmic. The law of cause and consequence brings about birth and death, It is inevitable. Every act must result in some consequence sooner or later. Men are born, they live and die as a result of the impact of actions done in previous lives. The impressions of the past on the present cannot be wiped off, except with the grace of God. The future is molded by the activities of the present. People list the causes of death, but the only relevant cause is ignored. That is birth. All that is born has to die. All that is put together has to disintegrate. The fourth field is the emotional. The feelings of devotion lead man to the realization that the Lord is all-powerful and all-pervading. So one should not complain when things go wrong, or appropriate the credit when things go right. Devotion must confer equanimity, because the devotee sees his favorite form of the Lord in every being. He knows that the Lord is the inner resident of all beings, and so whatever happens is His will. The fifth field is the intuitive. The inner vision of the one who follows the path of reason and discrimination tells him that there is only one, and not two. So all dual attitudes and opinions are false and misleading. There is just one energy or consciousness in all beings. So long as the consciousness of I and mine persists, the one in all cannot be recognized. Equanimity can be earned only by giving up duality. Many people want to get the divine vision of the Lord, but it is not possible to attain this vision, this divine state, just by wanting to do so. There are 4 entrances to the Lord's mansion of bliss, and the watchmen who guard the entrances are self-control, inquiry, contentment, and detachment. The first watchman is control of the inner sensory organs. It is the inner senses that provoke the external organs. Controlling the inner senses is a difficult matter, but if we are able to do this, we can easily control the external organs. The second entrance is guarded by inquiry. The ability to separate the good from the bad is essential to man. We should first distinguish between the permanent and transient things. When you say, "This is my body," it is clear that you are different from your body. Therefore, it becomes quite clear that you are the soul and not merely the body. The body itself has no wisdom, but the God who lives in the body has all wisdom. As your discriminating power arising out of this wisdom grows, and you realize the divinity of the soul, you will automatically get self-satisfaction or contentment. He who is a satisfied person is rich, and he who has many desires is poor. Whether we meet with sorrow or with happiness, we should be satisfied and regard it as God's gift in our own interest, and develop a spirit of satisfaction and equal-mindedness. The fourth entrance to the Lord's mansion of bliss is guarded by detachment. Once a person is satisfied, he will naturally get detachment. This detachment should not be something you get when you do not possess anything. When a person has all the comforts and all the wealth, and in the full understanding of their transient nature gives up these material acquisitions, then it can be termed detachment. Do not make the distinction of saying this belongs to you and that belongs to God. In reality, everything belongs to God, and you should develop such a feeling. Therefore, it can be said, if you acquire self-control, you can easily develop inquiry or discrimination. Through this, you can develop the aspect of satisfaction, and then, even without your knowing or making an effort, you will get detachment, and you will be able to enter the house of the Lord and experience the bliss of His divinity.
See, today morning there is darshan, special for you. Every day to give darshan. Early morning never thank you to death. This is my duty. My work.
The World Conference in 1980 was the third event of its kind to include representatives from around the world. These conferences serve as the basis of a growing support system for the centers and service organizations in India as well as abroad. They provide the opportunity for devotees to share experiences and to meet fellow devotees with different nationalities, different religious backgrounds, different languages, and different lifestyles. A world conference at Prasanthi Nilajam is a time for celebration and the tradition of ancient ceremonies. Sai Baba's message is present everywhere at such a time, especially in the purpose and attitude of the devotees. Here, statues representing Shiva, or the divine powers of creation and destruction, are taken in procession from the prayer hall of the ashram to the temple in the village. Here, Sai Baba opens an exhibit of photographs depicting activities from various centers around the world.
This small room, my heart is very big. Very big. Yes. Today, this plate, complete plate. What is that? Today, tomorrow, happiness is union with God. Happiness is union with God. Yes.
There is no one word in the English language equivalent to the Sanskrit word for Dharma. The concept of Dharma comes to us from the most ancient scriptures known to man, and is also another pillar of Sai Baba's message. The first pillar, Satya or truth, reveals the nature of man and his universe. The second pillar, Dharma, sets forth the context within which man may appropriately live his life for the purpose of realizing God. Dharma, therefore, means righteousness, duty, morality, virtue, justice, the discovery of the proper path of one's life, the ideals of a higher life. Each of us has a Dharma, a path, and the discovery of that path and the goal of liberation to which it leads is the reason for living. A dharmic act is in accordance with righteousness. An adharmic or non-dharmic act is in opposition to the flow of mankind's peaceful evolution toward God.
Man must dedicate himself to Dharma and be engaged always in Dharma so that he may live in peace and the world may enjoy peace. In all worldly activities, you should be careful not to wound propriety or the canons of good nature. You should not play false to the promptings of the inner voice. You should be prepared at all times to respect the appropriate dictates of conscience. You must be ever vigilant to discover the truth behind all this scintillating variety. This is the entire duty of man, your Dharma. Every unselfish act which prepares the ground for the merging of the soul with the oversoul, which broadens the vision toward the basic God immanent everywhere, is a dharmic act. Each such act is a tiny stream that swells the river of holiness rushing toward the sea of absolute God realization. Your acts and activities are all rituals in the worship of the supreme God that pervades the universe. Whatever is done in an attitude of dedication and surrender is a component of the Dharma which leads to realization. Dharma cannot be restricted to any particular society or nation, for it is closely bound with the fortunes of the entire living world. It is a flame of light that can never be extinguished. It is not for any particular caste, religion, or nation. It is the very breath for humans everywhere. People refer to various duties, rights, and obligations, but these are not the basic truth of Dharma. They are only means and methods of regulating the complications of living. They are not fundamental. All these moral codes and approved behaviors are prompted by the need to cater to two types of creatures, two types of natures, the masculine and the feminine. They connote gross and subtle, inert and conscious, the all-pervading duet. All creation came about by the interrelation of the inert and conscious. So too all the various mores have emerged on account of this bifurcation. All this ramification and elaboration of Dharma is due to this, the masculine and feminine. Therefore, the chief Dharma for the practical progress of the world is the moral conduct and behavior of these two. Dharma has no prejudice or partiality. It is imbued with truth and justice. Name and fame, honor and dishonor, vice and wickedness, good and bad, are all equal and uniform for both men and women. There is no such thing as women alone being bound by the rules of Dharma. Just as a woman should consider one person as her husband, man too has to be faithful to one woman as his wife. Man must honor his wife as an embodiment of the feminine aspect of God and act in accordance with her wishes. Then only can he deserve the status of man. So too, she has to consider her husband as an embodiment of the masculine aspect of God and minister to him and follow his desires for the fulfillment of her duty. Women are the backbone of progress, the heart of the nation. They play the chief role in the Dharma of life here on earth. Woman's mission is to lay down the canons of rightness and morality. No nation can be built except on the culture of its women. They must provide children with moral and spiritual training. When the mother is imbued with Dharma, the children get the benefit. When she is skilled in morals, the children learn to be moral. The level of education among women decides whether a country is to prosper or decline. Her acts and conduct are crucial factors. I do not declare that women should not be educated. Whatever they study, if they are endowed with good qualities, accompanied by dharmic actions and spiritual disciplines, then their study is really worthwhile, and society is indeed benefited. Mankind has to adhere to Dharma. He has to see that he never goes against it. The path of Dharma requires that men and women give up hatred against others and cultivate mutual concord and amity, through which the world will grow day by day into a place of happiness. If you are careless about the discipline of truth, every duty laid on you by Dharma and every action prompted by righteousness will hang heavy as a burden. Search for the reality behind all the worldly phenomena, and that search will make all righteous acts light and pleasant. The Lord has so shaped man that he is inclined towards God, delighted at the expansion of his vision, and happy when he is moral and virtuous. So man must serve his own best interests by adhering to his basic nature, by concentration on God, by the cultivation of truth, and by practice of Dharma. These principles of Dharma will not change to suit the convenience of mankind. Dharma is immutable. Dharma persists as Dharma, then, now, and forever.
A world conference at Prasanthi Nilajam is a time for ceremony. It is also a time for introspection and rededication. The goal of the organization is to help all people realize the unity behind the apparent multiplicity of God's creation, realized not as a remote mental exercise, but to make real through education and the awareness born of the actual experience of serving others, which then can grow to eventually permeate and encompass the mind, the senses, the emotions, the intuition, every aspect of the human being. This organization serves as the field on which one's individual efforts to realize and manifest the true self are allowed to play themselves out in a mutually supportive context. It does not erect barriers or hierarchies between the individual and God. On the contrary, the very foundation of its existence is in the recognition that God is the indwelling life and energy at the core of everyone and everything. At the opening ceremony of the World Conference, the universality of Sai Baba's message was acknowledged in the presentation of new translations of his writings in Chinese, Japanese, Italian, Spanish, Swedish, and in the presentation of a collection of articles written about the impact of Sathya Sai Baba and his message by devotees from India and around the world. There is another word which applies to the concept of Dharma, and that is Sanatana, meaning ancient, timeless.
Many individuals speak of Sanatana Dharma, the ancient, timeless truth of Dharma. But those who have really understood its true form are very few indeed. Sanatana Dharma, or the Sanatana religion, is the very essence of life. It embraces all the religions and shows itself as the universal religion. The Sai organizations have come into existence for the purpose of establishing oneness. The main reason this Sai organization teaches equality and equal-mindedness stems from this aspect of the Sanatana religion. The goal to which all paths aspire and at which all investigations end is this Sanatana religion. People proclaim and preach that one should do good work, utter good words, and have good thoughts. But that kind of thing does not satisfy me. By doing good work alone, one cannot become a good man. It will only be possible for you to do good work if you are good yourself. So the first thing that you should try and do is to become a good person. Then it will be natural that you do good work. The creation of man is the creation of the world. When the individual improves, the community will improve. When people become good, the world will become good.
Just as Dharma is timeless, so is the art of music in a culture which perceives sound as a continuation of the initial vibratory act of creation. whether representing multiplicity on the 108-string santur as played by Shiv Kumar Sharma, or the unity of the flute's single tone with its infinite number of variations as performed by Hari Prasad Chavesia, it is all one, and that one is God.